Okay, first of all, tonight's class is sponsored by Hesi Atanian for Shlema for Meir ben Leah, Moshe ben Ashraf, ben Yamin ben Sani, Alim ben Achteram, and Yitzchok ben Azat, and for Ilu Neshama of Rabbi Yitzchok ben Moshe. So all those things should be fulfilled. Thank you for sponsoring the class. Okay, tonight's Parsha is Parsha's Korach. Everybody knows the story of Korach. In fact, they tell the story that there was one rabbi that he had a speech only for Korach. That was the only speech he had was Korach. So whenever he went to speak somewhere, before he got up to speak, do you hear me? Everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay. So before he got up to speak, he would drop something on the floor, and he said, "Ugh, look at it, went into the ground. It should be like Korach, it went in the red." Speaking about Korach, and he started making a speech about Korach. But that was the only speech he had. But the question is, a lot of Mefarshim masters, the Rebbe asks the question, why in the world is a Parsha in Chumash called Korach? Korach was a Russia. Korach ended up dying, buried in the ground. His children did tshuva, the Medrash says, but Korach himself didn't do tshuva. The only reason why Korach sinned, Rashi explains, Korach was very, very smart. So why did he see such a foolish thing to start up against Moshe and Aaron? So it says, and this is how great Korach was. He saw in prophecy that Shmuel Hanavi is going to be the descendant from Korach. Shmuel Hanavi was a Levi. He was actually a descendant of Korach. And Shmuel Hanavi, the Medrash says, was equal to Moshe and Aaron. We say in Friday Night Maida from Tilim, Moshe Aaron b'choy Hanav, or Shmuel b'kodesh Shmei. So the Medrash says that Shmuel was equal to Moshe and Aaron. So Korach said, "I'm going to have such a great son, Korach, coming to me. How could it be that I'll die?" What he didn't know, the Medrash says, and Rashi says, that his children did tshuva, but Korach himself died. But the question is, why in the world is a Parsha in Chumash called with the name Korach? We have a bigger question, by the way, in Mitzvah Shem. If we ever, when we'll get there, we'll discuss it also. You have a Parsha in Chumash called Balak. Balak, Korach at least was Jewish. Balak wasn't even Jewish. And the Medrash says Balak hated the Jews more than Bilam did. And therefore he hired him to come and, curse the Jewish people. So the question is, but why in the world is there a Parsha in Chumash with the name of Korach? Balak we'll get to one day. So the answer is like this. On the Pasuk Vayikach Korach, it says, V'spalig Korach. V'spalig Korach, from the Chernobyler, it says, should we get the Pasuk? Targum Unkel says on the word Vayikach Korach, literally means he took. He took. But the Targum doesn't say it means he took. It says V'spalig Korach. V'spalig comes from the word machlekes. Peleg in Aramaic means an argument, a fight. And in fact, the Ne'em Elimelech connects this to the concept of the first argument, the first disagreement that existed in the world was on the second day of creation. When Hashem made the Rakia, the heavens, that split the higher waters and the lower waters, like it says in the beginning of Chumash. And therefore is the same thing the Ne'em Elimelech says, Korach also created this machlekes against Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore Korach wanted to take over from Aaron HaKohen for sure, and even he wanted the other eyes on Moshe Rabbeinu's position also. So it says, and therefore on the second day of creation, we know in Chumash it doesn't say Vayara Lekim Kitayv. Every day of creation it says Kitayv, except Monday. Tuesday it says twice Kitayv. So Rashi in Chumash says, why doesn't it say Kitayv on the second day? Simply, Rashi says, because Hashem didn't finish Monday's work until Tuesday. So before the work was finished, Hashem's not going to say Kitayv. So on Monday, Hashem didn't say Kitayv. When Tuesday, he finished Monday's job, he said Kitayv. And then for Tuesday's job, he said Kitayv. But the Chassidus, Kabbalah, Medrashim explains no. The reason why it doesn't say Kitayv on the second day of creation, because whenever there's a machlekes, whenever there's fighting, when there's ever diversity, whenever there's fighting, the Torah doesn't use the word Kitayv. And therefore, the fact that on Monday, Hashem split the higher waters and the lower waters, he made a differentiation. He split, he separated higher and lower, even though it wasn't a fist fight, so to speak, but it was a concept of separation and disagreement between the higher waters and the lower waters. So therefore, the Ispalu Korach, the name Elimelech that Rebbe brings down, connects it to the concept of the second day of creation, when Hashem doesn't say Kitayv. So what's so good about that? He says, because the whole purpose of Torah was given Laseis Sholem Ba'olam, to make peace in the world. In order to make peace, you need to have a fight. You can't, if nobody's fighting, or if there's one person, you can't say he's at peace. Peace means there are different opinions, and you join them together. And of one person alone, you can't have any concept of peace. The whole concept of Torah, Laseis Sholem Ba'olam, like we learned in the previous classes, when Hashem was giving the Torah to the Yidden, and there was a big commotion, thunder, lightning, the whole world was scared, and they came to Bilam, who was their prophet, and they said, Bilam, what's going on? And Bilam said to them, don't worry, Hashem oiz lama yitain, Hashem yivarech esamed v'shalom. Don't worry, Hashem is giving everybody peace. There's no fighting. Shnei ksuvim, we say before Haidu in the morning, Shnei ksuvim, hamachishim ze'eseh, there's two psukim, automatically contradictory. We spoke this before Shavuos, that the holy and of Matan Torah is in number 3. So it says like this: Korach represents machlekes. Korach represents an argument. So the whole purpose of Torah, by calling the Parsha by the name of Korach, is to make peace even in the levels of Korach. In Pirkei Avos, and the Mefarshim point this out in Pirkei Avos, it says, machlekes, which is the Shem Shemayim, is good, Hillel and Shammai. Machlekes, which is not the Shem Shemayim. So what does the Mishnah use as an example? Korach v'chol adasei. Korach and his community. It doesn't say Korach u'Moshe. Korach didn't fight against his people. His people were with him. Who did he fight? Moshe and Aaron. So therefore, it should have said, what's a machlekes shelo l'shem shemayim? Korach u'Moshe. Instead, it says no. Korach v'chol adasei. Korach fights himself. Because in Torah, which is Moshe Rabbeinu, there is no machlekes. The whole inyan of peace is even in the name of Korach, which by definition, Vayikach Korach, Korach created a machlekes, an argument. Torah calls it by that name because Torah is saying that's the level of Shalom. Even in the level of Korach, there ends up to be Shalom. And therefore, what did Korach scream at the end? And we'll discuss that more later. Moshe emes, the Torah say emes. Moshe is true, and his Torah is true. Even Korach realized that. So Moshe Rabbeinu never fought. It's only Korach v'chol adasei. So the Rebbe explains that's the reason why the parsha is called Korach, because the whole inyan of Torah is to make peace in the world. Okay, another unique thing of Korach, the Rebbe explains in a different sicha. What Korach, again, you have to understand, the fact that Torah mentions Korach shows he was a great person. We said he had nevuah, that Shmuel was going to come from him. Korach, Rashi Torah calls Pikachoy, who was very brilliant. Korach was a great man. He had a mistake that we'll soon see what his mistake was. But Korach, what did he want to be? He says in the matter, he wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. He wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. He wasn't, and he came fighting. Why is he not a Kohen Gadol? So the Rebbe explains, let's look at the positive side of that. The positive side of that is that a Jew should want to be a Kohen Gadol, even though he knows he can't. Korach knew he cannot become a Kohen Gadol. What's the Torah teaching us? Torah is calling a name Korach. What do we learn from that? The Rebbe explains in a different sikha that Korach's greatness was that he wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. And if he wanted to be a Kohen Gadol, that's what we need to learn from him. To thrive, to be great, even though we're not necessarily able to do it. And the Rebbe mentioned this in a class this week. The Gemara says, in Pirkei Avos last Shabbos, when it says, in the first Beis HaMikdash stood 410 years. Second Beis HaMikdash stood 420 years. Okay? It says, in the first Beis HaMikdash, in 410 years, there were only 18 Kohanim Gedolim. Throughout the 410 years, there were 18 Kohanim Gedolim. In the second Beis HaMikdash, which stood 420 years, the Gemara says there were 300 Kohanim Gedolim. And keeping in mind, Shimon HaTzadik was a Kohen Gadol for 40 years. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years. Together, that's 120. That means in the 300 years left, there were 300 Kohanim Gedolim, which means every year there was a new Kohen Gadol. It got to why did that happen? I don't want to elaborate on it now too much, but why that happened was the Romans controlled the country, and people wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. They would bribe the government to appoint them as Kohen Gadol. And every year they knew they were going to die. It got to a point, the Gemara says, when the Kohen Gadol went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and Yom Kippur, if you weren't great enough, you died. The guy would go in with a rope tied around him. As soon as he died, they pulled him out. And they knew they were going to die. They knew they weren't so great. I remember I mentioned the Shabbos in the Pirkei Avos class. When the Rebbe said this story, I remember the Sikh when the Rebbe cried. And the Rebbe said, look at this. They knew they were going to die. And yet it was worth it for them to go into the Holy of Holies even once. And for that, they knew they were going to die, but it was still worth it for them. So therefore, what does the story of Korach teach us? The story of Korach teaches us a person should strive to be a Kohen Gadol, even though we're not necessarily going to be a Kohen Gadol. Then, the Rebbe explains like this. Korach, the story of Korach was after the Meraglim. Last week's Parsha was the Meraglim. This week's Parsha is Korach. So the Rebbe asked the question, the appointment of Elitzaphan that Korach was angry about happened before the spies. It really happened chronologically before the spies. Why is the story of Korach complaining after the spies? Why is the Torah mentioning the story of Korach after the spies? When Korach should have complained, he complained after the spies, but why didn't he complain before the spies? As soon as Moshe Rabbeinu appointed the other guys that he was upset with, he should have complained. So it says, the Rebbe explains in Sikha like this. Again, remember we learned last week, the Meraglim wanted to stay in the Midbar, they wanted to stay in the desert. They didn't want to be action-oriented. They didn't want to have to work for a living. They wanted to have thought and speech. They wanted to learn Torah. They wanted to daven all day. They didn't want to work. What happened at the outcome of the Meraglim? The outcome of the Meraglim was that no, you have to go into the land. You have to go into the land. Action. So now Korach says, oh, now I have a problem. What's the problem? He says, if you're saying action is what matters, Kol ha'eda kulam kadeshim, then everybody's equal. Moshe Rabbeinu's action of putting on tefillin is not different than ours. Moshe Rabbeinu's action of benching lulav and esrog was exactly like ours. What was the uniqueness of Moshe Rabbeinu? Not his action, his thought, his kavanah, his speech, his act. That was great. But the action, why is that any greater than us? So now Korach says to Moshe Rabbeinu, now that you're preaching to us, now that you're telling us, that action is what really matters. So now Korach says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Kol ha'eda kulam kadeshim, everybody is holy. Madua tisna, what makes you different? Okay? Now, the question, but Korach himself wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. So he's also saying, I'm different than everybody else. So the explanation is like this. What Korach wanted was a Kohen Gadol that's be separated from everybody else. Not a Kohen Gadol that influences others. He wanted to be a Kohen Gadol that has nothing to do with action. He wanted to separate, and I'll explain this in a second, it'll be very easily understood. He wanted to be a Kohen Gadol that's removed and disassociating himself from the world, which means it like this. We have to do mitzvahs in Gashmis, correct? We have to do a physical mitzvah. But there's also the kavanah of the mitzvah, the intent of the mitzvah. Mitzvahs need to have a kavanah. What's the kavanah? What's the simple intent of a mitzvah? Like it says in Shulchan Aruch. Hashem commanded us to do it, and we're doing it to make us holy, to make the world holy. That's what our purpose of doing a mitzvah is. Our purpose is not only the physical action of the mitzvah. If you forget about the godliness in the mitzvah, if you forget about the Hashem that's in the mitzvah, then action could become very dangerous. A person could do an action, which maybe be a mitzvah officially, but if they forget that the action is because Hashem said so, then you create a Germany. You create the people that anti-Semites. Because you're separating God from the actions. What's very, very important, and this was Korach's mistake. Korach said, everybody's holy. Okay? I want to be a Kohen Gadol, but not a type of Aaron Kohen Gadol of Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom. He was involved in the world. He brought Kedusha into the world. Korach said, and we'll see this later on beautifully, the way that Rebbe brings it out with the name of Korach. Korach actually said, yes, you need action. That we know from the Meraglim. But why does the action have to be infused with godliness? Take out the godliness from the mitzvah. You can have people that do mitzvahs and they don't do it because God said so. They do it because it's a nice thing. It's nice. It's family oriented. It's a nice get together. Hanukkah is a very nice get together time, family time. You can have a lot of mitzvahs like that. Once we take out the kedusha from the mitzvah, then the whole mitzvah is lost. And God forbid, as we'll soon discuss, it can become very dangerous. So what Korach wanted to do, and when he screamed at Moshe, now that action matters, okay, so action matters, so let's all be equal, but I want to be better than them in a way that physical action of a mitzvah and spirituality are two separate things. And that was Korach's sin. Korach's sin was that in the physical action that Hashem told us to do, you need to have the spirituality of it. You need to have the kavanah. You need to have the intent. You need to have the thought and speech of Kedusha permeating the action. It's not enough to do action. You know, the Gemara says, A mitzvah without kavana is like a body without a soul. You have in any mitzvah, right? You have the action of the mitzvah. That's the body of the mitzvah. What's the soul? What's the life of the mitzvah? The halacha says, and Chassidus and Kabbalah explain it even more. What the life of the mitzvah, the neshama of the mitzvah, is the kavanah, the intent, the spirituality of the mitzvah. Korach wanted to make two separate things. Korach said, Kohen Gadol should be a Kohen Gadol, Kedusha should be Kedusha, the mitzvah should be physical actions. We cannot connect the two together. And that was his Aveda. And that was the fight.
We could get was a big, like one of those hard case suitcases. It was supposed
What?
to be like 69. We needed it because we were overweight. And
sorry for that. Okay. Okay, so this is what Korach's sin was. Now, to continue with this concept in a very beautiful way, we know that the name of everybody brings out the essence of the person. Dr. Rebbe says in Shaykh Damuna. The name that's called to the object, like Dr. Rebbe gives the analogy, even the word Even, which means stone, is Aleph with Ban. Ban is the source, the spiritual source of the stone, and it's Aleph. Every name has its particular meaning based on the letters of the name. The Gemara tells the story that Rabbi Meir, the Gemara says, Medayik Bishma. Rabbi Meir was very meticulous with names. He was very, very meticulous with names. The famous Rabbi Meir. One day, a new student came to his class, his yeshiva, and the boys were very impressed with him. The boys were very impressed with this guy. He sounded like a big, young scholar. And Rabbi Meir told his students privately, beware of this guy. And the students couldn't believe him. He was such a good student and participated. They couldn't understand why Rabbi Meir said what he said. One day, the guys were in, I guess, before in a mikveh. The guys were in a mikveh, and he stole all their clothing. And he left. He came back to the mayor.
Okay, I have to learn.
He came back to the mayor, and he said, the mayor said, I knew by his name, whatever his name was, I knew by his name that he was going to be, that he was a thief. I was able to tell by the name that he had. The letters of a name bring out the essence of the person. And therefore, Chassidus explains, I don't want to elaborate on this now, any person that has the same name are interconnected somehow. They're interconnected somehow because they have the same name. That's the lifeline of the person. Now, Korach is spelled Kuf, Reish, Ches. Got it? Kuf, Reish, Ches. Okay? Now, let me give an introduction to this a little bit. The world was created, we say in davening every day, Ki beka Yudke Hashem Tzurei Lamed. With the letters of Yudke, Hashem created the worlds. And the Gemara says, B'Yud Nivra Olam Haba. With the letter Yud of Hashem's name, he created Olam Haba. And B'Hei Nivra Olam Hazeh. And Olam Hazeh was created with the Hey. Now, what's the letter Hey? Hey, we know, is a very holy letter, right? It's Hey, you write Hey for Hashem's name. It's two Heys in Hashem's name. So the letter Hey is a very holy name, a very holy letter. Now, what's the letter Hey? So I'm sure you can picture it, not open a siddur or whatever. A Hey has three parts to it. Top, right line down, and then the third leg of the Hey is a half a leg, right? There's a space between the bottom leg and the top. The right leg is connected to the top, and the left leg is separated. That represents, Chassidus explains in many, many Maimorim, that represents thought, speech, and action. Top one is thought, bottom right, the vertical one and to the right is speech, and the last letter, the half leg, so to speak, that is the level of action. Because the pasuk is quoted in the end of Pirkei Avos, Berasiv Yitzartiv Af Asisiv. The world of Bria, not Atzilus. Let's leave Atzilus out for a minute. Bria is a world of thought. It says in Kabbalah. Yetzira is a world of speech. And Asiya, this world is a world of action. But the pasuk says, Kol hanikra b'shmi ulchvedi, which is the world of Atzilus, Berasiv, Yitzartiv, Af, Asisiv. There's an Af, meaning also created Asiya. That means that between the world of thought and speech to action, there needs to be a separation. Okay? Therefore, Hey is a very holy letter. It has thought, it has speech, and it has action, but there's a difference between a little break between the action and the thought. Okay? Even though there's an expression by Chassidim in Yiddish, winzig getracht, noch winzig gerett, mehr getan. For those of you that don't speak Yiddish, which is most of you, little thinking, less talking, and more action. You know, people think a lot, talk a lot, but the main thing is action. But the action got to be with a break. Okay? Now, let's take the three letters of Kuf, Reish, and Ches. Now, I'm going to explain something else first. In Basi Lagani, in the Friedrich Rebbe's Basi Lagani, and obviously in the Rebbe's Maimorim, he elaborates on that much more. It speaks about the difference between Dalid and Reish. Okay? A Hey, by the way, halachically, is a Dalid with the third leg. Okay? Look at the letter Kuf. A Kuf is a Reish, right? Plus the third leg that goes below the line. Now, the two letters Dalid and Reish, and you'll understand in a second what I'm coming to. Dalid means Dal, which is poor. Reish comes to the word Rosh, not head, but Reish Shin, which means poor. Dalid means poor. Reish means poor. There's a pasuk called a Rosh Ein Kol. A Rosh, a poor person, has nothing. Well, what's the difference between a Dalid and a Reish? There's a world of difference between a Dalid and a Reish. Dalid is holy, and Reish symbolizes evil. Where did that get from? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. God forbid, take the Dalid and exchange it for a Reish, you will have Hashem Acher, another God, foreign God. The pasuk says, "Lo sishtachaver lekel acher," do not bow down to another God. If the Dalid would be there instead of the Reish, God forbid, it would be Lo sishtachaver lekel chas v'shalom lekel echad. So Dalid and Reish look alike, they mean alike, but yet Dalid is Kedusha and Reish is evil. Now, what's the difference in looks, information between a Dalid and a Reish? If you look at a Dalid, the Dalid is the line on top, and then the leg down coming down. But on the top right, the top line extends beyond the leg. It goes a little bit beyond the leg. In a Reish, it's rounded, right? So there's no Yud. Now Hebrew goes right to left. The letter Dalid has a little Yud on the top right of the letter, right? Any dot is a Yud. So the Dalid, the top line protrudes beyond the right leg. So Dalid has what's called Yud, which symbolizes bittul, humility. So Dalid is a letter of Kedusha because it has the bittul, the humility. Therefore, Dalid is a holy letter. Shem Echad, Dalid is a holy letter. Reish is lacking that bittul at the beginning of the letter. And therefore, you can have two opposite levels of nothingness. You can have a person who has humility. They feel like they're really nothing. That's Kedusha. And then you can have another person that is really nothing. He doesn't have anything. So these are the two similarities, but Dalit is Kedusha and Reish is evil. Okay? Now, from a Reish, okay, you have the letter Reish. When you add the third leg to the Reish, it's the level of Kuf. Right? What's a Kuf? A Reish with the third line. But the third line goes below the line. Right? The Hey stops at the line. The third leg of the Kuf goes below the line. What does that represent? Chassidus explains very interestingly, when the action goes into evil below the line, it goes like they say in Yiddish in Dred, it goes into the ground. It goes into the ground because it's not Kedusha. And therefore, as the Pasuk says, Ragleha Yordes Moves. Its feet go down into death. What's the problem with the letter Kuf? Kuf has three things, just like the Hey. Kuf has thought, speech, and the third leg, which is action. And there's even a space between the third leg and the top, just like the Dalit and the Hey. But what's the problem with the Reish and the Kuf? The Reish creates the Kuf because Reish means thought and speech without humility. Thought of evil, speech of evil. What happens then when the action comes around? It goes down below the line into total evil. So what's the letter Kuf symbolize? Thought, speech, and action of total evil. What did Korach want? Action should not have anything to do with holiness. Like we said before, that I've explained, Korach wanted Kedusha should not be into the evil, into worldly things. Let worldly things be worldly things. Yes, we need action. Yes, we need to go into Eretz Yisrael to have action. But let it be what it is. Let the world be world, and let Kedusha be Kedusha. That is the letter Kuf. The letter Kuf is thought, the speech, and action. But because the thought and the speech lack the Yud, the humility which represents Hashem, Yud is Hashem, so then the action, thought, speech, and action are all negative. What's the Reish? Again, like we explained before, the Reish is rounded, no bittul. What does Reish represent? Thought and speech, but then there's no action. You're not coming to do Torah mitzvahs because your thought and speech is evil. And now we come to the third letter, Ches. What's Ches? Ches is a Hey, but the third leg of the Ches is closed. The Hey has a little bit open. What's the difference between Chometz and Matzah? The Mem Tzadik is in both. Chometz is a Ches, and Matzah has a Hey. Right? Everybody knows that. So all the Mussar Sfarim, Chassidus Sfarim, they all talk. Ches represents evil. That's why Chometz is Chometz. Haughtiness, evil, the lack of humility, lack of bittul, it's all ego. What is the letter Hey? Hey is Kedusha. Thought, speech, and action properly. What is the Hey? The difference between the Hey and the Ches? The Ches, because it's closed on all three sides, where is it only opening to? It's only opening down into evil. The Hey has an opening on top that allows Kedusha to seep in. Ches doesn't have that hole for Kedusha to seep in. It closes up the Kedusha, and then it's only open down to the bottom. So again, what does the letters Kuf Resh Ches mean? What do they imply? It implies exactly what Korach wanted. Now you need action. Okay, have action, but without the Kedusha. Without the, in fact, that's how the Rebbe explains in Basi Lagani. He quotes, he doesn't quote the Gemara. There's a Zayar in the Gemara that says, when Hashem wanted to create the world, all the letters of the Aleph Beis came to Hashem and said, create the world with me. Create the world with me. And the Zayar goes backwards. It doesn't start from Aleph. It starts from Tov. So it says like this. Tov is no good. Okay, whatever. Then it comes to Kuf and Reish. So it says in the Zayar, Kuf and Reish are Asvin des Chazia al Sitra de Bisha. The letters Kuf and Reish symbolize evil. What's with the letter Shin? So Hashem says, evil I'm not starting the Torah with. Come to the letter Shin. Hashem said, I don't want Shin with Kuf and Reish either. Because what's Shin Kuf Reish? Sheker. Falseness. Lies. The opposite of emes. So Hashem, and therefore the Gemara says very interesting advice. If you want to lie, because Kuf has one leg and Reish has one leg. You can't stand on one leg. Shin has a whole base. There's the whole bottom of the Shin. It's mamish a whole base. So it says in the Gemara, advice. If you want to lie, start off with a little bit of truth. Because Kuf Reish, Sheker, if you want the lie to be accepted, start off with a little bit of truth. But anyway, so you see that the letters Kuf Reish and Ches are all representing the split between Kedusha and the world to be united. And that's exactly what Korach wanted. Action, yes. The Meraglim demanded, now we need action. We need to go into Eretz Yisrael. We need to do action. But you know what Korach said? Korach said, business should be business and Torah should be Torah. And the Rebbe says, what's the lesson from this? People think that when I'm in shul, that's where Judaism applies. I'm in yeshiva, that's where Judaism applies. I go out into the business world, I could cheat a little bit, I could speak foul language a little bit to get into with everybody else. I don't have to be so honest in business. I can do this in business, that in business. They said, you know what? Come on. God is in the shul. God is in the yeshiva. We think God's in the business. So the Rebbe explained that's exactly what Korach wanted. What Korach wanted was that to have a separation, like what happened the second day of creation, Bnei Elimelech said, there was a separation between the higher waters and the lower waters. Higher waters represents Shamayim, spirituality. The lower waters, the water beneath the earth, that represents earthly things. The second day of creation created a split between Ruchnius and Gashmius, between heaven and earth. It created a split. And that's why Hashem didn't say Kitayv, because in a split between heaven and earth, there cannot be any good. What does there have to be? There has to be the unity of heaven and earth. And that was Korach's sin. As great as he was, as great and as intelligent as he was, and great as he was, bottom line, he had a big sin. He wanted to separate between heaven and earth. He wanted to have a Kohen Gadol, but nobody that deals with the world. Okay, another thing which is very interesting in the Parsha, the beginning of the Parsha, Rashi quotes that What did Korach do? Korach wanted to prove Moshe Rabbeinu wrong. So what did he do? He came with Moshe to Moshe Rabbeinu with a question. Two questions. One question was, Bayis Mole Svarim. I'm not going necessarily in the order. Bayis Mole Svarim. He said like this, Moshe Rabbeinu, I have a shaila for you. I have a question for you. A house full of books, of Svarim. Holy Svarim. Does it need a mezuzah or not? Does it need a mezuzah or not? Korach thought for sure Moshe Rabbeinu is going to say it doesn't. Why? If one little scroll of two parshias of Shema, two portions of Shema, are in the door, feeds the whole house, the house is full of Sfarim. The house is full of Sefer Torahs. Don't forget, that's what they had. No, they didn't have books in those days. They had Sefer Torahs. So Korach thought for sure Moshe Rabbeinu is going to say a house full of Sfarim doesn't need a mezuzah. What was he going to say? If everybody's holy, why do you need a leader? Everybody's holy. The house is full of Sfarim. Why do you need a mezuzah? Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, it doesn't need a mezuzah. And then he asked the second question. In fact, it says he brought them chamishim. What did he do? They all wore a garment full of tcheles. Tcheles is the purple dye from the chalozin fish. Okay, today some people wear tcheles. We don't, but some people wear tcheles today. But in the biblical times, the garments, the tzitzis, which are 4 long strings doubled over, so we have 8 strings, and then you have, the chulias, as they're called, the wraparound. So in the time of the Torah, time of the Gemara even, they had tcheles. From the 4 long strings, 1 string was the tcheles, the purple wool. And that was the tcheles that they wrapped around the other tzitzis. So now, Korach came and said, a talis that's full of tcheles. Full of tcheles. The whole garment is tcheles. Does it need tzitzis or not? Korach thought for sure Moshe Rabbeinu is going to say it doesn't need tzitzis. Why? If one strand of tcheles frees the entire garment of its obligation, if the whole garment is tcheles, so for sure it's good. Why do I need tzitzis for? These are the two questions. And the Rebbe explains, if it's the same question, why does he need to ask both questions? But that's not for now. It's a complicated thing that Rebbe elaborates a lot on why you need both questions and what did he think. It's the same answer. But, so what happened? So after Moshe Rabbeinu said, it does need tzitzis, it does need a mezuzah, Korach started laughing at Moshe Rabbeinu. He said, this is foolish. You make up all these things on your own. This is not coming from Hashem. This is ridiculous. And he got the 250 leaders, like it says in the story of the Parshat. He got them to start screaming, making fun of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the question is, why wasn't Korach right? Why does a house that's full of svarim need a mezuzah? Think about it. Korach was right. A garment full of tcheles, full of tzitzis. Why in the world do you need tzitzis? In fact, it's interesting. I just want to mention this, but the Rebbe refutes it. The Gorarie in his commentary on Rashi says, why did he ask 2 questions? A house full of Sfarim and Tcheles? Because he was arguing against Moshe and Aaron. Moshe represents Torah, Bayis Mole Sfarim, and Aaron represents mitzvahs. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah, Aaron is mitzvahs. So the Gorarie says the reason why The Korach came with both questions was because one question was against Moshe and the other question was against Aaron. But the Rebbe says it's not true because his whole complaint was against Aaron. As we'll soon see, his whole complaint was against Aaron. But the question is, coming back to the question, why in the world does a house full of Sfarim need a mezuzah? Or why is it that a garment full of tchelis, why taka does it need tzitzis? So the Rebbe says like this, the same point we just said before. The mezuzah is on the outside of the door. When you're going in from the outside or you're going out from the inside to the outside. The concept of mezuzah, the Rebbe explains, is to bring the kedusha of the home into the street. The whole purpose of a mezuzah is to bring the kedusha, the holiness of the home, of Bayis Moli Sfarim, like we said, the shul, the yeshiva, the house full of kedusha. It's not enough to have the house full of kedusha. What's necessary to be done is to bring the kedusha into the world outside. And that was Korach's mistake. Korach said, if the house is full of Sfarim, the house is holy. If the house is holy, why do you need a mezuzah? The whole garment is tcheles. Why do you need the tcheles on a garment that's full of tcheles? The answer is because, again, this was Korach's mistake. Korach's mistake is the holiness should remain in the house. You don't have to bring the kedusha to the street. You don't have to bring the kedusha to the street. The kedusha should stay in the house. The kedusha should stay in the garment of tcheles, which represents kedusha. Tcheles, like the yam, which represents the heaven, as Rashi says at the end of last week's Parshat. So tcheles, the garment, represents kedusha. The house full of Sfarim represents kedusha. Keep it there. That's what Korach said. Keep it there. Why does it need a mezuzah? Moshe Rabbeinu says it does need a mezuzah. It does need tcheles. Because what is the purpose of kedusha of the home? To bring it out into the streets. You know, years ago, and this is one of the big chedushim, unique concepts that the Rebbe taught us and lived with and taught and preached. Years ago, by the way, even today, there's many frumid Yidden, many religious Jews, very religious Jews, that can't fathom the fact that you go out into the street to put tefillin on with somebody. Go out into the street to give somebody, a woman, Shabbos candles. Why? What's the problem? Their opinion, I don't want to say it's similar to Korach, but in this respect, their opinion is a person wants religion, he wants to daven, he'll come to the shul. Why are you bringing the shul to them? Why are you bringing the kedusha of Torah and mitzvahs to the world? Let the world, if they want, let them come and do Torah and mitzvahs. Why do they need to be brought to the world? That was exactly what Korach said. Korach said the house is full of mezuzah. You don't need the house is full of sfam. You don't need a mezuzah. The outside wants kedusha. Let them come. They'll come into shul. We'll put tefillin on with them, even though that they don't do many times either. But why should I bring the kedusha to the street? The Rebbe said this was Moshe Rabbeinu's answer. A house full of sfam needs a mezuzah. Why? Because you need to bring the kedusha of the mezuzah, which is outside the door, to bring it to the street. You need to bring it into tcheles, and that's the whole thing with Korach. And therefore, Rebbe brings down in various different sichos. When Korach's children didn't die, they did tshuva. And what did they scream before they died? Moshe emes, v'Torah say emes. Moshe is emes, and his Torah is emes. The word emes The Rebbe brings, it doesn't quote which Sfarim, but the Rebbe says in Sfarim that Emes stands for Aaron, Mezuzah, and Cheles. What was officially the fight of Korach against Aaron? Why he chose, he became the Kohen Gadol and everybody else. Against the Mezuzah that we said, the Mem is Mezuzah. He couldn't understand why a house of Sfarim needs a Mezuzah. And Cheles, and the tzitzis, that's a garment full of tzitzis. The Cheles, why do you need tzitzis? So this is what they screamed. Moshe Emes, the Torah say Emes, Aaron, Mezuzah, and Cheles. That's what the Eibishter wants. Moshe Emes, the Torah say Emes. That's the reality of what Hashem wants. Okay, it's late, but there's one more issue in the Parsha that you can elaborate on a lot, but we don't have time. From today's Parsha, we learn out a very interesting halacha. When the Torah in the middle of the Parsha, Korach, speaks about separating Truma. Okay, there's a pasuk here that says, "Kein torimu gam atem trumas Hashem." Kein torimu, you should separate truma. Gam atem. There's a word gam, also you. And the Gemara learned out from there. From here we learn out mikan shashluchai shal adam kamaisei, that the shliach of a person is like the person. Gam atem, the extra word gam, teacher, which is in this week's parsha, teaches us that when a person makes a shliach to do something, if it's not an aveda, then the person is actually the shliach adam kamaisi. The Rebbe quotes many times, especially when the Rebbe speaks about shluchim and shlichus. There's a sefer called Rabbi Yosef, Lekach Tape from a great tzaddik called Rabbi Yosef Engel. He wrote a lot on different sugis and shas, different parts of the Gemara. He went into it very deeply. And he brings down that there's three meanings of shliach shel adam kamaisei. When I send you as my messenger, it could be done in one of three ways. Number one, like this. I send you to do something, you do it. So you are doing the action, but you're doing the action. But it's considered as if I did it, which means you separate truma from me. I have to separate truma, the things for the kohen, and I can't do it myself. So I make you a shliach, I make you an agent to do it for me. So the lowest level of shliach is you do it, it's your action, but it's considered that I did it also. Okay? But you doing the action, but it's considered that I did it. A higher level of shliach shel adam kamaisa, he explains, means that no, when I do an action for you, you did the action. Not that I did the action, but you get the credit. Shliach shel adam kamaisa in a higher level means when you send me as an agent to do a job for you, I am doing it, but you did the action. It's a higher level. It's not that I did it in this, you get the credit for it. You did the action. The highest level of shliach, one? The first level is, I tell you to do something for me, you're doing it, you did the action, but I get the credit as if I did it. Second level is, no, when you do an action for me, I did it, you didn't do it. Because you did it as my shliach. Shliach shel adam kamaisai. The agent, the praxi of somebody is like the person himself. That means I did the action. You did it for me, but I did the action, not you. It's considered that I did the action. The deepest level of shliach shel adam kamaisai is, no, I am you. The proxy, the agent, is the sender. In fact, there's a very famous question. It's a very famous Tesis in Kedushin. Asks the following question. If I can make a shliach to do something for me, why can't I make a shliach to put on tefillin for me? Or to eat matzah for me? If an agent is like me, so okay, I'll tell a man, do me a favor. You'll put on tefillin for me today. Why isn't that good? So he says, 100% right. You did the action, correct. The one that sent you did the action. But on whose body was it? If I put tefillin on your body, I don't get the mitzvah of me wearing tefillin. So if I make you an agent to put on tefillin for me, right? Yeah, I'm putting on tefillin, but I'm putting it on your body. If you say eat matzah for me, yeah, I'm eating matzah with my mouth, but it has to be eaten with your mouth. And the body can't change. But this is an interesting concept. The Rebbe always says, the Rebbe always really learns a third level of shlichus, that a shliach is the sender. The agent, the proxy, is in the place. He is the sender. He is the mishaleach. The Rebbe always speaks. It's only Gimel Tammuz this week. When a person goes on shlichus, they should know the Rebbe says, "I'm going with you." Why is the Rebbe going with you? Because you are representing the Rebbe. You are his shliach, so that's the Rebbe. And therefore you have to behave properly. Anyway, that's it for today. I just want to mention a few things, very important. Number one, Wednesday night at 8:30, which is Gimel Tammuz, there'll be a Zoom Farbrengen here on this Zoom. It's Rabbi Kesselman Farbrengen in honor of Gimel Tammuz. That's number one. Number two, next week, Monday, and that Wednesday, next week, I'm not in town. So there's not going to be a Zoom class next Monday and next Wednesday. But this Wednesday, there'll be a Zoom Farbrengen in honor of Gimel Tammuz. Everybody should have a good Chaydish tonight, and tomorrow's also the Chaydish. If you didn't daven Ma'ariv yet for the man, please don't forget to daven Ma'ariv. And everybody should have a great night and a great Chaydish and a good everything.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Thank you, Rob. Good Shabbos.
Wednesday night.
Wednesday
night.
good Shabbos.
Bring your own booze.
Great shot.
Yeah, for the Farbrengen, if we say L'chaim, it's not going to be good for you. You have to say L'chaim where you are. You can't Zoom a L'chaim. And once again, tonight's class was sponsored by Ezi Yatanian for the full Shleima from Meir Ben Leah, Moshe Ben Ashraf, Ben Yamin Mistani, Halim Ben Achteran, Yitzchak Ben Azad, and Ilui Nishmas Rabbi Yitzchak Ben Moshe. Have a good night, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night, everybody.